G'day guys, welcome back to True Footy. This is going to be one of my final videos for 2024, and I thought what I'll do is I'll do a way too early ladder prediction for 2025. This is getting harder and harder as the years go on, and I think it's just a reflection of the equalisation measures taking hold in the AFL, and we'll get into this, but this is so difficult. Bearing in mind I will do a proper ladder prediction when the actual season starts next year, or before it. That would make more sense. And the other day I did release a video predicting every game for the season of 2025. That produced some weird outcomes that I'm not sure I'm totally on board with. This one is using a little bit more logic. Either way, it's incredibly hard to do, but I would suggest that the outcomes of this ladder, where I'm going to try and rank the 18 teams, is going to look a lot different to whatever the ladder was in that ladder prediction. So presentation wise, I want to do something a little bit different for this particular ladder prediction. I am going to rank the teams into a tier maker first, discuss them generally, and then I'm going to open up an Excel spreadsheet and we're going to fill the teams in the rough order of which I currently expect them to finish. Great, so I've done the legwork already, and we'll do the proper ladder after this, but I ranked it into flag contenders, outside contenders, finals aspirants, and spoon contenders. And one thing that jumps out there is that I've got 10 teams that are either flag contenders or outside contenders. And I stand by that. I really find it difficult to eliminate any of those 10 teams from being flag contenders, and even the group below that, I feel harsh having them in the group that is unlikely to make finals, even though, individually, they've all got a decent case to be made for making finals. And then in the bottom group, I've still got the same three bottom teams, and we'll get into why. I still think, even though you'd probably expect at least North and West Coast to improve, logically speaking. Richmond have lost a lot of players and replaced them with draft picks. So it's hard to imagine, even with a better injury run, that they move up the ladder. North and West Coast have a little bit more of a case to be made for it. I think the most likely team out of those three teams to elevate out of the bottom four is probably North Melbourne. But even they are still going to be pretty damn young next year. Not a whole lot has changed, but we should see some growth for them. And we did see an extended run of better form from North Melbourne last year, which is some cause for optimism, but I still think they're a tier down from the teams above them. The tough thing is, when you think about it, like when you look at those finals aspirants, when it comes to constructing the bottom four, I have to pick one of those teams to finish bottom four. And this year it was Adelaide, followed closely by Melbourne, who finished one spot above. But I think you can make a case for either of those teams being finals contenders in 2025. So that's really tough. St Kilda is a team that I really do think could move up the ladder in 2025. I did say that in 2024, or at least I expected them to play finals after they played finals in 23, and that prediction burned me. But I still have faith in them, so it's going to be very difficult to place them somewhere in this ladder prediction. Gold Coast has every reason to move up the ladder too. Another year under Dimmer Hardwick. The list is starting to mature. It is still young when you look at their selected 22, but with a couple of additions, I did see Dan Rioli actually did an MCL today, but generally speaking, heaps of reason to move up. The outside contenders there are all self-explanatory. All of those teams either played finals or got close in 2024. Fremantle is the one team that missed the finals out of that group, if I'm not mistaken, and I am pretty big on Fremantle going into 2025. Flag contenders, I still have Collingwood up there. I think that might be controversial to everyone who's not a Collingwood fan, but I think they'll overcome a poor season in 2024. Really, if you take away that poor start and another form slump in the middle, they should have played finals, and I still think would have been dangerous had they made finals. So in my opinion, with the additions of Houston and Perryman, they should still be in that mix, and they have a proven ability to win finals once they get there. Brisbane and Sydney by default will be premiership contenders, and Geelong, in my opinion, only gets stronger this year. They've got a pretty young group. I mean, there's a lot of veterans there. There's also a good under 24 group. Like they've got a pretty young list. It's pretty top heavy and bottom heavy, but there's a lot of quality youth in there. And the addition of Bailey Smith could be some real X factor. And when you think about it, really, like Geelong, what were they, 10 points off making the grand final? And I probably would have tipped them against Sydney had they made it. So I think they're absolutely a flag contender who will only be stronger in theory in 2024, in my opinion. So that is my mapping out of the tiers. So now we're going to move to my Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to fill it out in front of you. Hey guys, just a quick note to let you know that this video is brought to you in a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Investing in yourself is important. People will invest time and money into their careers. They'll invest time and money into their fitness. But one aspect of the self that people can tend to overlook is the mind. And something like therapy could be the most underappreciated tool out there that people can use to invest in their mind. It's a common misconception that you need to be diagnosed with something like depression or anxiety to invest in your mental health. Therapy can be a great tool for self-improvement and investing in healthier habits and just talking to somebody about the things that are on your mind. And it's even better when they're a trained mental health professional. It's also really good to know that when you're expressing yourself, you can do so in a safe space without fear of judgment. BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video, and they're on a mission to help make starting therapy easier. It's a platform where therapists and their clients can communicate effectively and get the most out of therapy. And it's really easy to start with BetterHelp. To do this, all you have to do is go to the link in the description of this video or simply go to betterhelp.com/truefooty. From there, you fill out a questionnaire that helps them assess your specific needs. And then in most cases, you're matched with a therapist within 48 hours. Then if you find that the therapist you're matched with doesn't feel like the right fit, you can easily switch to one at no additional cost. So if you're struggling, or perhaps you just feel like you could benefit from a therapy session, check out the link in my description or go to betterhelp.com/truefooty. That also gets you 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. Thanks guys, let's get back to the video. Look at this incredible presentation by TrueFooty. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I've got the groups that I've into the tiers that I just put them in: finals aspirants, cellar dwellers, outside contenders, main contenders, and I'm gonna construct the ladder in front of you. Which I realize probably lacks a little bit in production value, but you know what, it's as good a way to do it as any, because this is really tough. Like I said, there's 10 teams here that I think are broadly flag contenders in my opinion, a little bit generous in some cases for sure. These teams, finals aspirants, I think there's a case to be made for them improving, and then the cellar dwellers below that. So let's maybe start with the bottom. The one I'm confident about here is Richmond. I'm going to put them in last because they're going to be super young, overexposed, far more leaving the club than entering the club. They had a couple of retirements as well. They could have a better injury run, but I think this is an enormous test for Adam Uze. And if they somehow avoid the spoon, that is a massive win, I think, for Adam Uze and his credentials. So I think they are clearly the wooden spoon favourite, and I think it could be a 2-win season. Sorry, Richmond fans. I just think that's a byproduct of the situation that you're in. But hey, you're going to have access to the draft, and that's what this phase is really about for Richmond. Who's going to be the second worst team? I hate to say it, but I think West Coast will be, to be honest. Look, there is arguments to be made for improving. They invested in 3 best 22 players through the trade period: Matt Owies, Jack Graham, Liam Baker, of course, and then, you know, drafted well in my opinion. But in comparison to North Melbourne, who I'm going to put here to start off and be boring, same bottom 3. I think North Melbourne spent a lot longer of 2024 playing well, whereas West Coast had more wins, but played pretty poorly in every other game. I'd probably give us an honourable loss against Essendon, and there's the win against North Melbourne in Tasmania where we were beaten in every aspect of the game. And so for me, I just think there's so much ground to make up for West Coast. And North Melbourne, even though they're younger, I do think West Coast could finish higher. But my faith is very, very low at the moment. I think it'll be one more year of pain for West Coast. And North Melbourne won't improve enough to move out of that bottom 3. When you consider the gap between those bottom 3 teams last year and everyone else, I still feel pretty confident we're going to see the same bottom 3. Not sure about the order, but that's the way I'd have it. Who's going to finish top of the ladder? That is a very tough one to ask. I'm going to go Geelong here, to be honest. I think probably because they're just so reliable, that makes them tempting for me. And I think they'll accumulate enough wins. Look, last year they started 7-0, and I didn't even think they were playing that amazing. So if they can just even out their season, I think they've started well and finished well. And what did they finish on the actual ladder? It was 3rd in the end, and played Port Adelaide and smashed them in a qualifying final. I would have Brisbane, right up there, but I do suspect, similar to this year, playing in a grand final, might have a slow start to the season. They're going to be involved in opening round again, and they might do that thing where they time their run and just the best team in September. There's absolutely that chance. I'm going to say Brisbane finish about 4th. We can move these around, but that's the way I kind of see it at the moment. I think Collingwood finish 2nd. That is probably a bit of a bold call by me, but I think, they'll have the extra long break and the preseason. And yeah, they are an aging list, and I think that does make them a little bit vulnerable, but they added some really quality players there. And the system that they play means that I think they're going to be pretty reliable in 2025. So I've got them there. Who have I got finishing 3rd? It's not the Sydney Swans, in my opinion. I'm going to throw a different team in here. And this is my first ballsy call. Maybe not my first, but I'm going to say Fremantle finish 3rd. I think they might be a little bit of a ticking time bomb, Fremantle. I think the maturation of their list, the way it's come together, and how balanced it is, I think, when you look at midfield numbers, it's a very strong midfield. Hayden Young moved there this year and gave it a different edge. Their backline is really sound, some really good tools, particularly forward of centre, and great rucks. probably the best ruck combo going in the competition. And some of these players are getting to like 23, 24, 25. I think Fremantle, if they can just be more consistent, I think if you look at the last month there, they dropped some winnable games or, just failed to rise to the challenge a little bit. But I think next year, if they start winning games like that and have a home ground advantage, I think it'll be enough to make top 4. So I'm bullish on Fremantle as much as I don't want it to happen. I think Fremantle's year of entering their window really begins now. I've got Hawthorn in the same spot. I think they are a very uncertain team to predict in 2025. I know that people will extrapolate how this season went and think, well, it's only going to be better. I think there will be some hurdles for Hawthorn to overcome. Namely, they're going to probably be one of the most hunted teams in 2025, just looking in terms of the way they play. They slice teams up, particularly on the wider MCG, towards the back end of 2024. And they're still young as well, and a lot of their best contributors are young, which could lead to some level of inconsistency. It's not a battle-hardened, experienced team, even if you add Josh Battle and Tom Barras. Some good leaders in there, good plays in their prime. Hawthorn has a massive variance for me. They could finish first. I don't think that's crazy to suggest they could finish first, but I think it's equally likely that they don't rise to the occasion and have a bit of a setback here and miss finals. I don't think they're super locked in to play finals, so I'm going to have them pretty much in the same spot. I don't think they'll miss finals. I think they'll be too good to miss finals, but I just find it very hard to foresee them being as good as last year and being as consistent as last year. I think they might be a little bit vulnerable at times in 2025. So that's my prediction. Hawthorn to stay in the same spot. Maybe we'll take a little bit of a break from the top half of the ladder and we'll look at the bottom half. And look, I've got to find a bottom 4 team from one of these teams. I suppose you could say it could be one of these outside contenders, but it's very hard to just predict one team is going to have a meltdown. I mean, you probably should try and have a stab at one team like absolutely falling off because it happens every year. But it's a little bit of a random throw at the stumps for trying to predict who that's going to be. So I'm going to look at this group here and think, who is the team that I trust the least or rate the least? And it's a tough one because Essendon, I don't think will fall down that hard to finish in the bottom 4. I don't know if I'll predict them to play finals, but I think their floor isn't as low as someone like an Adelaide or a Melbourne, as we saw last year. Melbourne can capitulate, and it was not the first time this group has capitulated. They did that in 2019. I suppose that was 5 or 6 years ago now. And Adelaide did have a down year and are still one of the youngest teams in the competition, although they added 3 best 22 players who are all in their prime too. So that kind of helps that. I think St Kilda are too good to finish bottom 4. I'm not considering them, nor am I considering the Gold Coast Suns. It's got to come from this group. And I don't like it, but I think Essendon is probably the most likely there. I mean, that's a tough one. The thing is, Melbourne has so much top talent. If you get a fit Gawn and Petrarca and May and Lever, even before you get to guys like Clayton Oliver, I think that group of players will be too strong if they can stay fit. And then there's Bailey Fridge, Cozzy Pickett, Trent Rivers, some good sort of ancillary talents. They're just too good to back in to finish bottom 4. That being said, they could capitulate. I'm just not going to predict that. So I'm sorry, Essendon fans. I don't rate you as a bottom 4 team, but just look how even the competition is. There is still a big gap between these 3 teams in the next group, but Essendon I don't think stacks up, in my opinion, against these teams. Let's pick 3 finalists from this remaining group. I'm going to say the Western Bulldogs finish 6th. Actually, I'm going to say 7th. I'm going to put Adelaide in 6th. And I'm going to have the Sydney Swans sliding into 8th. So we've got 2 teams there, GWS and Carlton missing the finals. We'll put a pin in that for a second. I think the Bulldogs have a very good team, and I think they're very dangerous, and their best version of what the Bulldogs can produce is outstanding and can match it with anyone. But we don't see it week in, week out, and we do see some bad losses. At least that is, well, it's plagued them for this whole time that they've been a good team, and that's why they've never finished top 4, despite being an incredible team at time, particularly in 2021. Throughout the home and away season, I remember them being probably up there with Melbourne as the top 2 teams. I don't know, there's still some variance there with the Western Bulldogs where they can underperform at times and then perform really well in big games, but I don't think they'll miss the finals. Port Adelaide, I think, is still too strong. Again, terrible qualifying final, but sort of made up for it with a good win over Hawthorn in the second week. And generally speaking, I think have just been a pretty consistent home and away performer. And predicting them to miss the finals seems unlikely to me, as well as also considering their home ground advantage. Sydney, I think, are a bit liable here to maybe have a down year. So they have a new coach, which, we don't know what impact that will have. He's already been, he as in Dean Cox, has already been in that system. It's not as though they're getting a completely fresh perspective. It's just the figurehead at the top is changing. So I don't know how much it would disrupt them that John Longmire is not going to be coaching them in 2025. But again, played deep into finals and had a bit of a scarring grand final where they didn't fire a shot after quarter time. And I think that the recipe is there for them to fall away. But they're too talented and too good to miss the finals altogether. So in a sense, I think I'm just predicting the same thing in 2023. They got belted in the grand final and finished 8th. I think it'll be the same again. So with these remaining teams, so GWS and Carlton have missed the finals. Am I going to put them in 9th and 10th? I don't think that's necessarily a given. If I had to rank these teams, I'd probably go like this. I'd probably put St Kilda next. But it's tough with Melbourne there. They could easily be better than those teams. You know what? I'll back in Melbourne. I'll put Melbourne in this group here. What about the Gold Coast Suns? Are we doing it like that? I don't know how I feel about this yet. Let's have a look. These three teams, Melbourne, GWS and Carlton, have the core group of being an outstanding team that could contend. I think that's absolutely true. I just think, particularly with Carlton and Melbourne, they've shown an ability to buckle under expectation a little bit. Melbourne didn't handle it well this year. Some of that was injury, but not always. Carlton's back into the year was also pretty diabolical. Save for an impressive win against West Coast at Optus Stadium, as tough as that is. They did play well considering the circumstances. But other than that, the back end of the year was really poor, and their finals showing was also really poor. So I think they go into this year without a lot of momentum. How much is that worth? I'm not too sure, but I think my trust is a little low. GWS, I think, we also factor in they lost a number of players. Peatling, Perryman and Cumming, particularly the former two, I think they will miss. I think Cumming missed a lot of footy through injury anyway. They're also pretty reliant on some older guys in that team, so I could see a down year here for the Giants. Gold Coast probably have the most brimming talent in this entire group of young up-and-coming stars. There's still a question mark as to whether they take the next step, but a second year under Hardwick, you could easily make the case they move up. This is extremely difficult. I'm going to say Melbourne are the 9th team. I think they're too good to fall away, and I think if they do fall away, it'll probably be pretty harsh down into the bottom 4, but we'll see. The team I like next is probably St Kilda. I could easily flip those around and put St Kilda 9th. I realize I'm probably not being consistent across this video, but it's just so hard to separate these teams. I'm going to put GWS and Carlton next. I'm sorry, Gold Coast. I just can't do it. I just can't back in the Gold Coast Suns. And the Adelaide Crows have some variance too, where they could be this absolute dynamite Adelaide Oval team where good teams go there and get pumped. I feel like that is a bit of a cornerstone of an Adelaide team that is playing well. They've got some real good firepower, but they are quite young and I may be a little bit scarred by last year. But it's just also hard to put them ahead of Gold Coast, Carlton, GWS and St Kilda. So I might leave it there. That might be my best attempt right now. Bear in mind, when the season comes around, I'm going to feel probably different and I'm going to do some work in preparation for that, some season preview content that will help inform my prediction. But I honestly just think it's just an incredibly difficult thing to try and predict a ladder. It's not even about getting it right. It's about being able to defend it. And it's just so hard to separate some of these teams. But anyway, let me know what you agree with and disagree with. I'm sure this is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. I've tried to be creative. I think that's a fairly good creative. Well, maybe not the top 8. I think the most creative thing I have is Fremantle and Collingwood coming back up. Maybe the Sydney slide probably makes sense. Maybe I haven't done enough shuffling of bottom 10 teams moving into the top 8. I suppose I have 2 at the moment with Collingwood and Fremantle. Anyway, I'm done looking at this. Let me know in the comments what you agree with and disagree with, or just let me know your ladder prediction. There's going to be a lot of variance because I don't think the competition has ever been so even. But I've enjoyed the video anyway, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.